Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Mac Observer Show. I am your host, Ken Ray, joined today by Ross Rubin. He is the founder and principal analyst at Reticle Research. And I'm kind of stoked to say a friend of mine, I did the math earlier. It's like 15 years now, man.
A long time.
Yeah, I know. It's a while. It's weird to me because I can remember a time before Ross Rubin, but not much of one. I know you. A lot of our viewers and listeners may not. If you could, before we get into today's topic, because we're going to be talking about not artificial intelligence. That's just what everybody else is talking about. AR, VR, MR, Apple Vision Pro is our main thrust for today. But before we get to today's topic, let people know a bit more about you, where you come from, what you do.
Sure. Well, I've been following Apple and the Macintosh for a long, long time. I wrote the first book about the Apple PowerBooks. Not a lot of people know that. I've been an industry analyst for about 30 years focusing on technology. I spent years at a firm when the iPhone was introduced and tracked the growth of that. And so got to see a number of these revolutions, the web and mobile, really come into their own and as consumers adopted them.
Yeah, you were one of those people that I read long before I met you. And so when I finally did and was able to talk to you and ask questions, I was really stoked. So like I say, thank you very much for being here today. As we record this, Apple's most recent physical product is the Midnight HomePod Mini. And I thought maybe we should just blow everything out and just talk about that. But we already had plans, so let's talk instead about the thing that we were going to talk about. I guess the first thing I want to ask, because in my head, I liken Apple Vision Pro to Apple Watch in that a lot of people are buying it, not knowing exactly what they're going to do with it. I kind of feel like inside Apple, they're like, okay, we got a few ideas, but let's see what happens. Is that the product that you would liken Apple Vision Pro to as far as things from Apple, or is there another one that you would think, yeah, I'd put it more in this category?
Well, there is the wearable aspect of it, of course. That's something that they share. However, the usage models are very different. An Apple Watch is something small, unobtrusive. You can wear it all day for multiple days, and it's really not going to have an impact on how you're living your life. In many ways, it's a passive device that's collecting data about you, about your biometrics as you go throughout your day, and that's what enables it to provide this health information that can be helpful. The Vision Pro, on the other hand, is a session-based product. You're going to be wearing it for maybe half an hour, 2 hours. There are certainly ambitions among many companies in the extended reality space that we will get to something the size of my glasses, and that's something that people will be wearing every day, and it will be providing insights to them throughout the day. But we're a ways away from that. There are engineering challenges, there are power challenges, there are content challenges. So today it's really more about entertainment, interaction, maybe as an input method or an output method instead of a traditional monitor. And in some ways, there are similarities to the iPad, which was another session-based product. People weren't quite sure, what do I need this for? In the short term, it was between the tasks that you might do on your mobile phone versus your laptop. But over time, of course, it's been able to take over more of those mainstream computing tasks with its own flavor or spin on them in many cases because of the portability and form factor than was really envisioned in the early days. So today, certainly there's games, particularly on the VR side of things. There's a lot of industrial applications on the XR side of things in terms of training and simulations. However, it isn't necessarily obvious what the mainstream killer application is going to be. And even if there was something compelling, the price point isn't going to allow that to take off just yet.
Yeah. Just so we're clear, I wasn't likening the watch to the headset in terms of functionality. It was more the here are three or four ideas, but let's see what people do and let's see what
Hmm.
they come back with. Let's talk about sort of the general acceptance or even interest, I guess, in AR, VR, and mixed reality, I suppose, because I mean, in 1990, I guess we first started hearing about VR and it was going to be amazing. Probably from about 1995 to 2015, VR was a joke. It was, jokes about the movie Lawnmower Man or something weird you would see on a sitcom or things like that. At the same time, the Oculus Rift is starting to happen. Facebook actually buys Oculus and sort of starts raising awareness to an extent. And then it feels like Apple Vision Pro sort of came in and, on the one hand, blew off the doors of what these could be. I personally think the Apple Vision Pro probably also raised sales for the Meta Quest or not, or Meta Quest 2 or 3, because people are like, oh, I really want that, but oh, I can't afford that. Oh, but what's this thing over here? Talk to me about sort of the rising tide lifting all boats thing. Has that happened the way I perceive it as happening, or am I mistaken on that?
Yeah, certainly Apple entering a category can do a lot to legitimize that category. And Apple was not, we had this little VR bubble after Facebook or Meta bought Oculus, and Microsoft had VR uh, VR products, and there were others in the market, Steam and Samsung and HTC, so there were definitely other entrants. Apple held back. And I think, to the question about what can you use this for, the use cases were just too limited. Even at Meta's developer conferences year in, year out, they would talk about the promise of VR or the metaverse and how we'd be able to have all these meetings and how it would be this broad tool that people would use for all kinds of things. And then all of the announcements of software at the event would be games. So that's really where the market is now. It's this really polarized, bifurcated market where you've got games at the consumer end, and you have these high-end business simulations for design, training, at the other end, and it's really tough to find something in the middle. So certainly XR, the ability to integrate with the real world, helps pave the way for more of those broader applications because it's not as isolating as VR. There's only going to be so much you can do when you're immersing yourself outside of the real world. And so it's a step toward that. Again, there are form factor limitations, power limitations, a long way to go. But that's where really the activity is these days. And if you're going to have a consumer VR product, there's going to be a lot of pressure to make it an inexpensive product. Facebook, Meta would subsidize the headsets, and even with the Meta Quest 3 going for a fraction of the price of the Apple Vision Pro, they're talking about how now they're going to come out with another low cost headset, maybe get them back to where they were with the Oculus Go, which I believe was at 199 when they introduced it. I mean, that's price to move, as they say in retail. So
That's kind of amazing, though, because I don't really have an interest in having an account with Facebook, but I also don't have, $3,600 to throw around. I mean, I've got a Facebook account, but haven't been there in years. But my point is, like, I mean, part of me, when I consider it, $500 sounds cheap as chips, and it's not, except when the other thing that you're considering is $3,600 or more. Now, sort of to that end of what we've ended up with are games, what we've ended up with is something very consumer centric. Pardon. Where what we have are games, where what we've ended up with is something very consumer centric. We had a guest on a few weeks ago who said that the biggest failing of Apple Vision Pro, as far as he is concerned, is the fact that it didn't come with a controller. The fact that they are reliant entirely on gestures. Now, he is a person who has developed educational activities for virtual reality. He is also a person who likes to game on the headsets that he owns. To me, it sort of feels like philosophically, Apple is almost in a way hampering the ability of the developer, not hampering, but sort of forcing them in a direction that Apple wants it to go, which is no controllers, which is, something that Apple likes for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden you have 8 Apple pencils from which to choose. So it's kind of hard to say if it's going to stay that way. Let's start though with, was it a mistake to not come with a controller, or was that the right way for Apple to go as far as Apple is concerned?
I wouldn't think so. First off, maybe not for general use, but certainly the Apple Vision Pro supports controllers today. You can hook up an Xbox Bluetooth controller
Yeah.
and play games, play the iPad game. It may not fully support spatial computing, but it's just like in the 2D world, just as with the 2D devices, it's good to have an option to use your fingers and navigate the interface that way. And it's good to have support for controllers, mice, game pads, etc. So I think what Apple's going for in shipping without a controller is to just remove, particularly with something that is so new and so foreign to many buyers, something that removes an obstacle to acceptance, right? So I don't have to learn. I mean, I may have to learn to use some gestures, but I don't have to have this other thing. I don't have to charge this other thing. Should they support controllers? Sure. I think there's a strong argument for supporting controllers, and at the just looked at some of the products that were introduced at the Augmented World Expo last month, and there's some incredible stuff. There are these crossbows, and again, a lot of it is gaming focused. These like crossbow type things, these space gun type things, these suits, something straight out of Ready Player One, where it will give you force feedback all around your torso when you've been hit in a game. There's also even for non-game applications, you may want to have a more precise control if you're doing design work, being able to zoom in to a precise point and then zoom back out or rotate in 3 dimensions. So there are applications for that. On the other hand, we've also heard talk from companies that have shipped with controllers about how they are leaning in toward having the option for no controller. So when Mark Zuckerberg talked about how he felt the Quest 3 was the better product today for most people, he talked about the work they had done on hand recognition and how they were moving forward with that, presumably for their next generation. There's a company that does a text entry type product called Tap that has applications for assistive text entry. It can also be used in XR applications, particularly if you can't see the keyboard. And they're working on technology that will allow companies that have much less expensive smart glasses to have control without necessarily, a HoloLens or a Meta Quest type controller today.
So I want to talk a bit about sales for Apple Vision Pro, and we'll go, I guess, a couple of ways. The thing that I personally have found very frustrating over the past week or so as you and I talk I want to say there was a report from IDC. It was picked up by Bloomberg. It went all over the place. And the report said that Apple is going to have a hard time making sales of 500,000 Apple Vision Pros in 2024, which is weird because in 2023, what we heard was Apple was going to have a hard time physically making 400,000 Apple Vision Pros in 2024. Due to how complex the thing is to put together, due to possible shortage of components, not shortage of components like they're running out, but the screens are so blessed intricate and delicate, and they had one supplier for them, I think. And so what we heard was they might sell 400,000. Then I think there was one analyst who said they're going to sell 600,000. And now they're coming out and saying 500,000. And people are saying, well, this is a disaster. Talk to me about sales for this thing. I mean, would 300,000 have been fine? Was 600,000 too much to hope for? Is 500,000 a disappointment? What's your thought?
This is an unusual product for Apple. First of all, it's unusual for any company to come out with something where the first iteration is called Pro. And the implication being that it's a higher end version of whatever existed before, right? Or at least coming out simultaneously. So since there is no non-Pro Apple Vision, it seems that it is a matter of time, or it's on the drawing board, that there will be a non-Pro version of the Apple Vision Pro that is intended for more mainstream adoption. There's certainly been rumors about what it might contain. Is it going to be $500, $300? Probably not. Probably closer to 1,000 or 1,500, which would be, as you said earlier, Ken, there's this big gap in the middle that can be filled. So, and that would put it on par with a lot of premium headsets, certainly from the VR world that we've seen in the past. So not completely unreasonable, but it is an unusual product in that typically Apple wants to ship something that the use case may not be completely evident at first, but it's something where there's sort of an established need, or other companies have at least taken a stab at it, whether it was the MP3 player or the smartphone, and the Apple XR, the Apple Vision Pro really isn't an answer to the Meta Quest. It's maybe an iteration, a significant iteration over what Microsoft tried with the HoloLens, but that's kind of an imperfect comparison too, because Microsoft never really seemed to have interest in making the HoloLens a real product that people could buy in retail. It was more of a proof of concept and a tool for developers, and I believe they still sell it. But the idea was to use it to open the door to Azure services, their enterprise storage and cloud type thing. So clearly, this is something that they're looking to be more patient with, and it's going to take a little more time for the market to appear. Assuming it appears, you're going to need a lot more content. One big question mark is how appealing 2D content will be, and how big the market is for people who want to use this as a monitor substitute. There are some applications there, and whether that can hold developers over until more native spatial content is available. There's definitely, in those bifurcated markets that I mentioned earlier, the training, particularly on the enterprise side, the simulation, things like surgical type applications, some of the same types of things we saw for the HoloLens. That's there today. Some of it is there today. And there aren't a lot of spatial games yet, particularly compared to the Meta Quest, as you might expect, given that product is a tenth of the price. But uh, Apple clearly has a robust developer ecosystem, and the excitement around that and the price points for subsequent product and a maturing operating system could all meet in the middle.
There's yeah, there was an article that I saw recently that was basically saying that kind of thing, like how is a game developer, how is a program developer supposed to want to develop where, let's say, they hit 500,000 sales this year. Who knows how much time it's going to take? Who knows how much money it's going to take? And then if you get 50% of the market, you've still only sold 250,000 as it is
Right.
right now. And you're not even going to get 50% of the market, most likely, unless you do something like that thing Disney did where they gave it away. But, they've got Disney money, so they can. Do you want to do something dumb and fun, or do you want to do something serious? Because I was thinking we could try to name whatever the next Apple Vision Pro is going to be. Because it's not going to be Apple Vision Pro, unless it's going to be Apple Vision Pro 2, but that's kind of boring. You want to play?
Apple Vision Pro 2.
Well, Apple Vision Pro 2, no, here's what I'm thinking. Like when we move down to the consumer line, is it just going to be like something like Apple Vision Air? I don't think it'll be Apple Vision Mini because that would be like a pin's nose, which would be kind of funny
I think
though.
Apple Vision would convey what they're going for.
You think that's it? Really? Really? Okay, because there are too many people I think who are already calling it Apple Vision or calling it Vision Pro. I'm wondering about Apple Vision SE, or do they just do what they do with some of the other products? And it's like, we have Apple Vision Pro 2, and it's at the same $3,600, and now we have Apple Vision Pro for $34.99, and people are like, oh, that's a bargain for me. We don't have to play that game.
Well, I think it. Yeah, I mean, you could look at. Well, look,
Yeah.
it's a computing product, right? And so if you look at their other computing products, or even iPhone, right? It's always the name of the product, the baseline and
All
Pro,
right.
at least to start, and then you can go into things like Air, which sort of came later. So today you have MacBook Air and MacBook Pro, Apple Vision Air. I don't know if they do call it that. They're really going to raise expectations for the weight,
That's true.
which
That's
is an
true.
issue.
Although, what if it's Apple Vision Air? Vision Air, all one word, AIRE. Ooh,
Yes, are you a visionaire?
exactly. I'm
Uh,
I'm blowing my own
yeah.
mind right here. I don't care if you're not impressed. Let me ask you really. I got two more questions for you before we cut out.
Okay.
Is this already a two-horse race in the way that smartphones? And I know there's the return of Huawei, and I know there's Xiaomi, and I know there's a lot of stuff in China that we here in the West don't necessarily think
Right.
about. But in the way that smartphones, at least here in the States, are Samsung and iPhone,
Right.
are we done already with who's going to be here? Is it going to be Meta and Apple, and everybody else can take a powder, or is there still time for somebody else to show up?
I think I think it's premature. I think it's premature to say it until we see what Google, Samsung, and Qualcomm have cooking up. Qualcomm has, I mean, they're Meta's supplier. They've been active in the XR market for a long time, including in many of those Chinese headsets that you mentioned. And so we'll have to see what they come to market with. One thing about the Android ecosystem, and presumably this will be based on some flavor of Android, is that it leads to a lot of diversification of hardware. So we'd likely be seeing things that likely seeing things that were available at lower price points. Also, a lot of the MetaQuest apps are written in Android, so it wouldn't be so difficult to move a lot of those apps over to whatever this thing is.
And I guess the last question I have is, where is all of this going? We had a guest on a few weeks back who thought because I sort of assumed when this came out that what it was all geared toward was the glasses. That's one of the reasons you didn't have the controllers, because they don't
Hmm.
want people walking down the street looking like they think they have a rocket pack on, but they don't. I mean, that they've been trying to get users, that they've been trying to get developers, they've been trying to get everybody to think in terms of just a simple AR glasses, functionality. And so the guest that was on a few weeks
Yep.
back, he kind of blew my mind a bit, because he's like, no, 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 you'll still have like the full headset at home, and then you'll have a pair of glasses that you take with you, in sort of the same way you have a Mac at home and you take your iPhone with you. I mean, are we going? Well, you actually just said it a second ago. This is a computational platform. I mean, are we going? Is this a computer? I mean, is this going to be one of those things where we have the heavy duty one at home, and we have the other one that we throw in the briefcase, or is this just a waypoint on the way to the AR glasses? I mean, where are we going, man?
So certainly for the next few years, headsets are going to be around. We're just not going to reach that ideal combination of weight and horsepower that will allow us to rely solely on smart glasses. But um, over time, that would appear to be the dominant kind of XR product that we would see. Would there be like a game console like headset? That might be one scenario. But I think over time, as the horsepower increases, as the battery life increases, for most consumers, it's going to look a lot more like smart glasses.
Well, you were a tremendous amount of fun to talk to, and I hope we can have you on again sometime. I don't know. Apple may have another product or
So,
two in the fall. Maybe we could talk then.
sure.
It's tough to say. Before I let you go, though, if people want to keep up with what you're doing, is there a place? Do you send them to the socials? Do you send them to a particular website? Where should people go if they want the Ross Rubin feel whenever they want it?
Yeah, Threads or X, Ross Rubin, Rossrubin should work.
Threads or X, Ross Rubin, Rossrubin.
SSRUBIN.
Well, now I've forgotten what we were trying to spell. Ross Rubin, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate your being here.